The Mexican cartel surrounded a house on Good Friday. When Grandma spoke, there was total silence. It's 7:42 p.m. on Good Friday, April 18, 2025, when 8 cartel hitmen from the Jalisco New Generation Cartel surround an adobe house in the small town of San Geronimo, Texas. The house sits on Morelos Street, number 87, 2 blocks from the main church where 300 people are celebrating the Passion of Christ. The gunmen come armed with AR-15 rifles and 9mm pistols. They're looking for Stephen Vilcus, an ex-soldier who supposedly informed on a fentanyl route 3 weeks ago. What these men don't know is that inside that house, Stephen isn't there. His 81-year-old grandmother is there, Margaret Vilcus, who has been keeping a secret for 40 years that could destroy the entire cartel if she opens her mouth. And in exactly 23 minutes, when she finally speaks, the fate of 14 people will change forever. Margaret Vilcus was born in 1944 in that same town where they're now hunting her. Her entire life passed between those dirt roads, between Holy Week processions and parish festivals. She married Marcus Vilcus in 1963, had 5 children, worked selling Mexican sweetbread at the market for 35 years. To everyone in San Geronimo, Margaret was simply the town's grandmother, the lady who prepared atole for the Christmas posadas, the one who arranged the altar flowers every Sunday, the one who knew every piece of gossip, every story, every family in town for the past 4 decades. But there was something no one knew, something Margaret had kept with a silence stronger than steel since 1985. 40 years of absolute secrecy. Not even her children knew. Not even her late husband ever knew. Not even her grandson Stephen, the ex-soldier who was now provoking this invasion, knew the truth about his grandmother. Because Margaret Vilcus wasn't just a bread vendor. Between 1985 and 1992, for 7 crucial years, she worked as a civilian informant for the Drug Enforcement Administration, infiltrated in the first drug trafficking cells in South Texas. She passed along key information that resulted in 11 important arrests. She identified routes. She memorized names. She documented movements, all without raising suspicion. All from her bread stall at the market where the traffickers of that era bought and talked freely in front of a lady they thought was harmless. In 1992, when her DEA contact was killed, Margaret retired. She kept everything she knew in a black notebook that she hid inside her mattress, and she never spoke about it again with anyone, until this Good Friday night when the past and present would collide in the most violent way possible. The afternoon had started normal. Margaret prepared capirotada for Good Friday dinner. Her grandson Stephen was supposed to arrive from San Antonio, where he worked as a mechanic since leaving the Army 2 years ago. But at 6 p.m., Stephen called nervously. "Grandma, I'm not going to be able to come. I have a problem. Stay in your house, lock the doors tight, don't go out for anything." Margaret felt that emptiness in her stomach that only experience gives. She knew that tone of voice. She had heard it before in other people, in another era. It was the tone of real fear. "Mijo, what happened? Tell me the truth." Stephen took a deep breath. "Grandma, 3 weeks ago I saw something I shouldn't have seen. A drug delivery at the shop where I work. I recognized one of the guys who showed up. They're Jalisco Cartel people. They saw me. They know I saw them. Yesterday they called me. They told me they were going to come looking for me, that they were going to your house because they know that's where I grew up." Margaret's heart was beating hard, but her voice came out firm. "Are you sure they're coming here?" "Yes, Grandma. I have a friend who works with them. He warned me an hour ago. They're going tonight. They think I'm with you. Please go to Aunt Hortensia's house. Don't be there when they arrive." Margaret looked around her house. The adobe walls her husband built in 1965. The altar with Our Lady of Guadalupe that had belonged to her mother. The rocking chair where she nursed her 5 children. 60 years of life in those 4 rooms. "I'm not leaving my house, Stephen. This is my house and I'm staying here." "Grandma, please, these are dangerous people. I know, mijo. I know who they are. Trust me. You stay where you are. Don't come. I'll handle this." "But Grandma..." "Stephen, listen to me carefully. I was your age when traffickers started showing up in this town. I know more than you think. Now hang up and let me work." She hung up before her grandson could protest. She stood in the middle of the living room, calculating, thinking. 40 years had passed since the last time she had to use what she knew. 40 years believing that chapter was closed forever. If you want to know how this story ends, subscribe to the channel because what's about to happen in this house in San Geronimo, Texas is going to prove that some people never stop being soldiers, even though nobody knows it. She walked slowly to her bedroom. She knelt beside the bed with difficulty because her knees weren't what they used to be. She slid her hand between the mattress and the box spring. She felt with her fingers until she found the rectangular bulge wrapped in plastic. She pulled it out carefully. 40 years without touching it. The plastic was yellowed but intact. Inside, the black notebook looked exactly as she remembered it. She opened it slowly. The pages creaked. Her own handwriting from 1985 greeted her from the past. Names, dates, routes, connections, everything she had documented during 7 years as an informant. But there was something else in that notebook, something even her DEA contact never knew about. In the last 20 pages, Margaret had documented something she discovered by accident in 1991. The real names of 5 original founders of drug trafficking in South Texas. Men who later became legends of the narco world. Men whose sons and grandsons now controlled entire territories. And more importantly, she had documented the internal betrayals. Who betrayed whom? Who informed on whom? Who killed whom and why? She never turned over that information because it was too dangerous. Because she knew that if those names came to light, there would be an internal war that would kill hundreds. So she kept it as her life insurance, thinking that maybe someday she would need it. That day had arrived. Margaret closed the notebook. She wrapped it again. She put it in a shopping bag. Then she walked to the kitchen and continued preparing the capirotada as if nothing was happening. Because if her 7 years as an informant had taught her anything, it was this: never show fear and always have a plan. At 7:30 p.m., while the church bells rang for the holy burial procession, Margaret heard the engines. 3 pickup trucks. They parked in front of her house. The doors opened. She counted the footsteps. 8 men, all armed by the sound of metal against metal. She stood in front of the living room window. She opened the curtain. She looked at them directly. 8 young gunmen. The oldest couldn't have been more than 35. They wore dark jeans, black t-shirts, caps. 2 wore tactical vests, all with long weapons except one who carried a pistol. The one who looked like the leader, a thin man with a scraggly beard and a scar on his left eyebrow, saw her in the window. He gestured with his hand. "Come down, ma'am. We need to talk." Margaret didn't move. She simply observed them with that look that only 81-year-old women who have seen everything can have. A look without fear, without surprise, without submission. The hitman frowned. "Ma'am, I'm talking to you. Open the door or we'll kick it in." Margaret finally spoke. Her voice pierced through the closed window with surprising clarity. "You're not going to kick in any door. You're going to wait there while I finish putting away my dinner. Then I'll come out and we'll talk like civilized people." The hitman was bewildered. Nobody talked to him like that. Nobody gave him orders. He looked at his companions, seeking confirmation of how absurd the situation was. An 81-year-old grandmother was telling them what to do. "Ma'am, you don't understand the situation. We're here." "I understand the situation perfectly," Margaret interrupted. "You're looking for my grandson Stephen. He's not here. I don't know where he is. But if you want to talk to me, you wait until I come out. Or you leave. You decide." She closed the curtain. She returned to the kitchen. She turned off the stove. She put the capirotada in the refrigerator. She washed her hands. She took off her apron. She combed her hair in front of the bathroom mirror. She put on her blue shawl, all with a calm that defied the reality of having 8 armed hitmen outside her door. Because Margaret knew something they didn't know. She knew that fear is a tool, and whoever controls their own fear controls the situation. After exactly 5 minutes, she opened the front door and walked out to her small dirt patio. The 8 men immediately surrounded her. The leader stepped forward. "Now we're going to talk, ma'am." Margaret crossed her arms. "Then talk. Where's your grandson, Stephen?" I don't know. When was the last time you saw him? 2 weeks ago. You're lying to us. We called his phone a while ago. We saw the record. Yes, he called me. He told me he had a problem. He didn't tell me where he was. The leader moved closer. He put the barrel of his AR 15 inches from Margaret's chest. Your grandson saw something he shouldn't have seen. He informed on us to the San Antonio police. That doesn't get forgiven. We need to find him. And you're going to tell us where he is. Margaret didn't back up even an inch. She looked at the weapon. Then she looked the man in the eyes. I already told you I don't know where he is. You can believe me or not. But that's the truth. The hitman gritted his teeth. You know what happens to people who lie to us? I know many things, Margaret responded with an icy calm. I know more things than you can imagine. In fact, I know things about you and about the people you work for that you'd benefit from hearing before doing something stupid. The leader slowly lowered his weapon. The other 7 hitmen looked at each other with confusion. An 81-year-old grandmother had just said she knew things about them. The tone wasn't pleading or an empty threat. It was absolute certainty. What things do you know, ma'am? Margaret pointed to the plastic chairs she had on her patio. Sit down. This is going to take a while. Nobody sat down. The leader made an impatient gesture with his hand. We don't have time for old lady games. Either you tell us where your grandson is or we start doing this another way. Margaret sighed. Boys, you're young. You have no idea who you're talking to. And that's not your fault. Nobody knows who I really am. But if you give me 5 minutes, I'm going to tell you something you need to hear. One of the hitmen, a guy no more than 25 years old with neck tattoos, laughed. This old lady's crazy. Let's go. We'll kick in the door and search the house. The grandson's probably hiding inside. Margaret looked at him directly. Your name is Rudy. They call you the Owl. You have 2 daughters, one 7 and the other's 4. They live in Uvalde with your wife, whose name is Susan. You've been working for the Jalisco Cartel for 3 years. Before that, you worked at a poultry farm. The silence was instantaneous. Rudy went pale. How do you know that? And you, Margaret continued, looking at another hitman, a stocky man about 30 years old. They call you The Rock. Real name Herbert Zuniga. You have a mother in Eagle Pass who's sick with diabetes. You send her money every month. You joined the cartel because your younger brother got in first and they killed him. You swore to avenge him. The Rock stepped back. His hand trembled on his pistol. Who are you? Margaret looked at the leader. And you're Abe Renteria. They call you Lightning. You're 33 years old. You've been a cell commander for 1.5 years. Before that, you worked with the Knights Templar cartel until you switched sides in 2023. Your sister lives in Zapata. Her name is Ellie. She's an elementary school teacher. She doesn't know what you do. Abe Lightning let go of his weapon that hung from a strap over his chest. He stepped back 2 paces. Who the hell are you? How do you know all that? Margaret finally smiled. A smile without humor. I told you I knew things. Now sit down and listen, or keep pointing at me. But I warn you that if you kill me without hearing what I have to say, your bosses are going to be very, very angry when they find out what you let slip away. This time, the 8 men obeyed. They sat in the plastic chairs, on the ground, leaning against the wall, all with their weapons still in hand but not pointing, all staring at this 81-year-old woman who somehow impossibly knew their real names, their nicknames, their families, their stories. Margaret sat in her rocking chair that was on the patio. She folded her hands on her lap, and she began to speak. My full name is Margaret Vilcas Sanchez. I was born in this town in 1944. I married at 19. I had 5 children. I sold bread at the market for 35 years. But between 1985 and 1992, I worked for the federal government as a civilian informant infiltrated in the first drug trafficking cells in South Texas. The 8 men stared at her without blinking. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. In those days, Margaret continued, drug trafficking was just beginning here. It wasn't like now. They were small groups, families that started trafficking marijuana and heroin. I had my stall at the market. The traffickers bought bread there. They sat down to eat. They talked about everything in front of me because I was just a lady selling bread. Nobody suspects older ladies. We're invisible, and precisely because of that, we're dangerous. Rudy the Owl spoke with a trembling voice. Why are you telling us this? Because I need you to understand something very important. For 7 years I documented everything I heard. Names, routes, family connections, betrayals, alliances, murders. I kept it all in a notebook. That notebook is inside my house right now. And in that notebook there's information that can destroy a lot of very powerful people, including several of the bosses you work for. Abe Lightning leaned forward. You're trying to scare us. I'm trying to save your lives, Margaret responded. And along the way save mine and my grandsons. You came here looking for Stephen because you think he informed on you. Maybe he did. Maybe he didn't, I don't care. What I care about is that you're about to make a very big mistake. And that mistake is going to cost you everything. The Rock asked. What mistake? The mistake of killing me without knowing what I know. The mistake of hurting my grandson without understanding the consequences. Because if something happens to me, if something happens to Stephen, that notebook goes directly into the hands of the district attorney. And when that happens, at least 15 people from the Jalisco Cartel are going to fall. Some mid-level, some high-level. And when they start investigating who betrayed whom 30 years ago, there's going to be an internal war that's going to tear the organization apart. The hitmen looked at each other. Abe pulled out his cell phone. He dialed a number. He waited. Boss, we have a situation here. He spoke for 2 minutes explaining. He listened. His expression changed 3 times. Finally, he hung up. My boss wants to talk to you. Margaret nodded. Tell him to come, but tell him to come alone and unarmed. If he comes with more people, the notebook disappears and you'll never find it. Abe called again. He transmitted the message. He listened to the response. He hung up. He says he's coming in 20 minutes. Good, said Margaret. While we wait, I'm going to tell you a story. A story about a man you might know. His name was Oscar Arteaga. They called him the Owl. He was one of the first big traffickers in South Texas in the 80s. Rudy nodded. My grandfather worked with him. Margaret smiled sadly. I know. Your grandfather's name was Frank. He was a good person. He got into the business because he had no choice. But Oscar the Owl wasn't a good person. He was cruel, violent. He killed a lot of people, including 3 of his own partners who wanted to go independent. He killed them in 1989. He buried them on a ranch near Zapata. The bodies were never found. The silence was so dense you could cut it. You know where they are? I know exactly where they are. Because one of the men who helped bury them told me in 1990. He was drunk, crying, repentant. He told me everything. I documented it. I kept it. And now that information is in my notebook, along with 50 other stories just as explosive. The Rock wiped the sweat from his forehead. Why did you keep all that? Why didn't you turn it over to the government at the time? Because I knew if I did, there would be a massacre. Not only would the guilty die, their families would die, their children, innocent people. I had already helped arrest 11 people. My conscience was clear, but I wasn't going to have the blood of innocent children on my hands. So I kept the information thinking I would never need it. I was wrong. Before continuing, write in the comments what country and city you're watching us from because this story is just beginning, and what's going to happen when the boss arrives is going to change everything. A vehicle parked in front of the house. It was an armored black Ram pickup. A single man got out. He wore light jeans, a white shirt, cowboy boots, a Stetson hat. He was about 50 years old. Thin but wiry build, face weathered by the sun, eyes that had seen too much. He walked slowly toward the patio. The 8 hitmen stood up. The man signaled for them to relax. Good evening, ma'am. My name is Leo Andrade. They call me the Silence. I'm regional coordinator for the Jalisco Cartel in this area. Margaret looked at him carefully. She recognized him immediately even though more than 30 years had passed. You're Zachary Andrade's son. Your father trafficked marijuana in 1987. He was Oscar the Owl's partner. He got out of the business in 1990 because he saw things were getting too violent. He went to Houston. He opened a butcher shop. He died in 2015 of a heart attack. Leo. The silence stood motionless. How do you know that? Because your father bought bread from me every day in 1988 and 1989. He was a good man. He talked a lot. He told me his whole life, his fears, his plans, why he wanted to get out. Everything's in my notebook. Leo took off his hat. He ran his hand through his hair. My God, you're real. I thought Abe was exaggerating, but you're real. I'm very real. And what I know is very real. Now sit down and let's talk like reasonable people. Leo sat in one of the plastic chairs. What do you want? I want you to leave my grandson Stephen alone. I want this situation to end here, and I want to keep living peacefully in my house without anyone bothering me ever again. Leo. The silence crossed his legs. He took out a cigarette but didn't light it. He just rolled it between his fingers while he thought. Your grandson informed on us. He caused 3 of our men to fall in San Antonio. That has a price. Margaret nodded. Everything has a price. The question is whether you're willing to pay the price of killing him. Because that price includes everything I know coming to light. Leo looked at her intently. You're betting that we're more afraid of an old notebook than of looking weak. If we forgive your grandson, others are going to think they can betray us without consequences. You're not forgiving my grandson. You're making an intelligent exchange. My silence for his life. And believe me, my silence is worth much more than his death. One of the hitmen, an older man about 40 who hadn't spoken until now, stepped forward. Boss, with all due respect, we can't trust that she won't talk anyway. Even if we spare the grandson's life, what guarantees that tomorrow she won't go to the DA? Margaret looked at him. You're Eli. They call you Shadow. You're from Laredo. Your father also worked in this. They killed him in 2008. You were 23 years old. You swore to avenge him and you got into the business. Now you have 3 kids. You're raising them alone because your wife left with another man. Eli Shadow stepped back as if he'd been punched. How the hell? The answer to your question, Margaret continued, is simple. I've had this notebook for 40 years. If I had wanted to talk, I would have done it already. I didn't talk in 1992. I didn't talk in 2000. I didn't talk in 2010. I didn't talk in 2020. I'm not going to talk now unless you force me to. I just want to live in peace. That's always been my only goal. Leo leaned forward. Let me see the notebook. Margaret shook her head. The notebook is hidden in a safe place. It's not in this house. If something happens to me, a trusted person is going to automatically deliver it to the authorities. Leo smiled without humor. The old life insurance tactic, very smart. But how do we know that notebook really exists? How do we know it's not a bluff? Margaret stood up slowly. Her knees creaked. She walked toward Leo. She stood in front of him. In 1991, Oscar the Owl ordered the killing of a state police commander named Rudy Campos. The commander was investigating a cocaine route coming from the Rio Grande Valley. The Owl had him killed with 2 of his men. One was named Albert. The other was named Frank. They killed him on August 23, 1991 on the highway to Laredo. They shot him 14 times. They left the body in the ditch. Leo went pale. Nobody knows that. How do you know that? Because Albert told me 3 days later. He was terrified. He knew the commander had a family. He had 3 children. Albert had remorse. He told me that the Owl had ordered the murder because the commander wouldn't accept a bribe. He wanted to be honest. And they killed him for it. Everything's documented in my notebook. With dates, with names, with details that only those who were there can know. Leo stood up. He paced in circles. He rubbed his face. Ma'am, you don't understand. If that information comes out, it's not just Jalisco cartel people who fall. Entire families fall. Politicians fall. Police fall. Businessmen fall. It's going to be chaos. I understand perfectly. That's why I haven't spoken in 40 years and I'm not going to speak now. Unless you force me to by killing my grandson or killing me. It's your decision. Abe Lightning spoke. Boss, maybe we can make a different deal. Let the grandson live but send him far away. Have him go to California. Never come back. Let the lady know that if he comes back or if she talks, we go after the whole family. Margaret shook her head. My grandson isn't going to run. He didn't do anything wrong. He saw something by accident. You were careless. That's not his fault. The one who has to pay the consequences of being careless is you, not him. Leo returned to his chair. Mrs. Margaret, you're playing a very dangerous game. I'm playing the only game I can play. You have the guns. I have the information. We are at a stalemate. The difference is that I don't want anything more than peace. You, on the other hand, have a lot to lose. Leo closed his eyes. He breathed deeply. He opened his eyes and looked at Margaret with a mixture of respect and frustration. All right. Your grandson lives, but with conditions. Margaret crossed her arms. What conditions? First condition, your grandson can't talk to anyone about what he saw. Not to cops, not to prosecutors, not to journalists. If he talks, the deal's broken. Second condition, you can't talk either. The notebook stays hidden forever. Third condition, if at any time that notebook appears, we're going to assume you broke the deal. And we're going to act accordingly. Margaret thought for 10 seconds. I accept the 3 conditions, but I also have conditions. Leo raised his eyebrows. Which ones? First condition, nobody from the Jalisco cartel comes near my grandson ever again. Not him or his family. Second condition, nobody comes near me either. I keep living here peacefully until I die. Third condition, if something happens to me, if I get sick, if I have an accident, if I die of causes that seem suspicious, the notebook comes out automatically, so it's in your best interest that I live many more years. Leo extended his hand. Deal. Margaret shook his hand. The grip was firm. 2 people who perfectly understood the weight of words, the value of an agreement, and the consequences of breaking it. Leo stood up. He signaled to his men. We're leaving. You 8 were never here. You never saw this lady. You never heard this conversation. This stays between us and nobody else. Understood? The 8 hitmen nodded. Abe asked, and what do we tell the bosses about the grandson? Leo looked at him. We tell them we investigated, that the grandson wasn't the one who talked, that it was someone else, that we already took care of it. You let me talk. I'll handle managing this up top. The 8 men walked to their trucks. They got in. The engine started. The lights came on. Leo stood in front of Margaret. Ma'am, you're the bravest or the craziest person I've ever met. I don't know which. I'm a grandmother protecting her grandson, that's all. Leo shook his head. No, you're much more than that. You're a legend nobody knew about, and I hope it stays that way. Because the day your story comes to light, it's going to change a lot of things in South Texas. He put on his hat. He walked to his truck. Before getting in, he turned around. One last thing. That notebook really exists, right? It's not a bluff? Margaret smiled. You'll never know that for certain. And precisely because of that, you're going to keep the deal. Because doubt is more powerful than certainty. Leo let out a dry laugh. You're right. Good night, Mrs. Margaret. Take good care of yourself. It's in our best interest that you live to 100. The truck started. The 3 trucks disappeared down the dirt road, kicking up dust. Margaret stood on her patio, alone. The silence returned. In the distance, the songs of the holy burial procession could be heard. The town's life continued, oblivious to what had just happened in that adobe house on Morelos Street, number 87. Margaret went into her house. She closed the door. She leaned against it. Her legs were trembling. Her heart was beating so hard she felt like it was going to burst out of her chest. She had maintained her composure during the entire confrontation, but now that she was alone, the accumulated fear came out. She collapsed into a kitchen chair. Tears ran down her wrinkled cheeks, tears of relief, of terror, of exhaustion. 40 years keeping a secret. 40 years believing she would never have to use it. And tonight she had used it. She had bet everything, her life, her grandson's life, her family's future, on a single card. And she had won. But she knew that victory had a price. Now the Jalisco cartel knew who she was. They knew what she knew. The balance was fragile. It depended on both parties keeping their word. And in a world where words break like glass, that balance could be destroyed at any moment. Margaret wiped her tears. She stood up. She walked to her bedroom. She reached her hand between the mattress and the box spring. She pulled out the notebook wrapped in plastic. She looked at it for a long moment. 40 years of secrets, 40 years of information that could destroy criminal empires. She unwrapped it. She opened it. She turned the pages slowly. The names looked at her from the past. Oscar the Owl, Zachary Andrade, Albert, Frank, Rudy Campos, the murdered commander, dozens of other names, dates, places, confessions, betrayals, all documented in her careful handwriting, all kept like a weapon that waited 40 years to be used. And today, it had finally been used, but not to destroy, to protect. She closed the notebook. She wrapped it again. She put it back in its hiding place. Tomorrow she would move it to another place. It was no longer safe to have it there. Her phone rang. It was Stephen. "Grandma, are you okay? I saw the trucks pass by from where I'm hiding. What happened?" Margaret took a deep breath. "What happened is we talked. We reached an agreement. They're not going to look for you anymore. You're safe." "How did you manage that? What did you tell them?" "I told them the truth. Part of it, at least." Stephen paused for a long time. "Grandma, what truth?" "There are things about me you never knew, mijo. Things nobody knows. Someday I'll tell you. But not today. Today you just need to know you're safe and you can go back to your normal life." "Grandma, I can't stay quiet. They're trafficking. They're killing people. I saw that. I have to do something." "Stephen, listen to me very carefully. Sometimes doing something means knowing when to stay quiet. I did things in my life you never imagined. I helped arrest a lot of bad people. But I also learned you can't save the whole world. Sometimes you can only save your family, and that's enough." "But Grandma..." "But nothing, Stephen. You have a life ahead of you. You have dreams. You have a future. Don't throw it in the trash for a sense of justice the world isn't going to thank you for. Let the authorities do their job, you do yours. Live, be happy, that's all I want." The line went silent. Finally, Stephen spoke with a broken voice. "I love you, Grandma." "I love you too, mijo. Now rest. Tomorrow is a new day." 3 weeks after Good Friday, Margaret woke at 5 in the morning as always. She made herself a coffee. She sat in her patio rocking chair to watch the sunrise. Life had returned to its normal rhythm. Stephen went back to San Antonio. He resumed his work at the auto shop. Nobody bothered him. The Jalisco Cartel trucks never returned to San Geronimo. The agreement was being kept. But Margaret didn't let her guard down. She had moved the notebook. It was no longer in her house. She took it to her comadre Hortensia, who lived in Eagle Pass. She explained everything. She gave her precise instructions. "If something happens to me, you take this to the district attorney. Don't ask questions, just do it." Hortensia accepted without hesitation. Comadres protect each other. One morning in May, Margaret was walking to the market when a car stopped next to her. It was a white sedan. A man about 60 years old got out. He wore a guayabera and a palm hat. He had a kind face. "Mrs. Margaret, can I talk to you for a moment?" Margaret looked at him with distrust. "Who are you?" "My name is Marcus Solis. I'm a journalist. I've been investigating drug trafficking in South Texas for 30 years. Margaret felt a chill. "I have nothing to talk to you about." She walked faster. The journalist followed her. "Please, ma'am, just 5 minutes. I know who you are. I know what you did between 1985 and 1992. I've been investigating your story for 2 years. Margaret stopped dead. She turned around. "How do you know that?" "I interviewed 40 people. I reviewed old files from the DEA. I found your name in declassified reports. You were the informant with codename Cinnamon." Margaret felt the ground move under her feet. Nobody was supposed to know that name, nobody. "What do you want?" "I want to tell your story. I want people to know that an ordinary woman saved many lives 40 years ago. I want..." "No. The answer is no. My story doesn't get told. Never." The journalist pulled out a small recorder. "Ma'am, your story is important. Women like you are invisible in the history of fighting the narcos. But you were fundamental." "Put that thing away," Margaret ordered, pointing at the recorder. "I'm not going to talk. I'm not going to be part of any report. Leave me alone." She turned around and walked quickly toward her house. The journalist didn't follow her. But Margaret knew this was a problem. If one journalist had discovered her identity, others could do it. And if her name came out in some newspaper, the Jalisco Cartel was going to think she broke the pact. That night she called Leo the Silence. She had kept his number. It was part of the agreement. Direct contact in case of emergency. Leo answered on the third ring. "Mrs. Margaret, what happened?" "A journalist approached me today. He knows who I am. He says he's going to publish my story. I didn't tell him anything. But if he publishes something, you're going to think I broke the deal." Leo paused. "What's the journalist's name?" "Marcus Solis. He says he's been investigating the narcos for 30 years. Leave him to me. I'll take care of it. Nothing bad is going to happen to him, right? I'm just going to talk to him, to explain why that story can't come out. Don't worry." Leo hung up. Margaret didn't sleep that night. 2 days later, the journalist Marcus Solis appeared again. He knocked on Margaret's door at 9 in the morning. She opened cautiously. "What do you want now?" "I came to apologize. I talked to some people. They explained the situation to me. I understand why you can't talk. I'm not going to publish anything about you. You have my word." Margaret looked in his eyes, searching for lies. She only found sincerity. "Thank you." The journalist nodded. "But I want you to know something. Your story deserves to be told someday. Maybe not now, but someday. When there's no more danger. I'll be waiting for that day. When it's safe." The journalist left. Margaret closed the door. She leaned against it. She breathed deeply. The situation was contained. But it was a sign. Her past wasn't as buried as she thought. There were cracks. And through those cracks, the truth could escape. In June, Stephen visited his grandmother. He arrived on a Sunday afternoon. He brought flowers and Mexican sweetbread. They sat on the patio to drink coffee. "Grandma, I need to know what you told them that night. What secret do you have that made them leave you alone?" Margaret had been expecting that question for weeks. "I told you that someday I would tell you. That day is today." For the next hour, she told him everything. Her 7 years as an informant, the 11 arrests, the notebook, the secrets she kept, the confrontation with the hitmen, the deal with Leo, everything. Stephen listened without interrupting. When she finished, he had tears in his eyes. "Grandma, you risked your life for me." "I've risked my life for you many times, mijo. The first time was when you were born and your mother had complications. The second was when you had pneumonia at 4 years old. This was just one more. Grandparents do that. We protect." Stephen hugged her. "I don't deserve a grandmother like you." Margaret stroked his hair. "Everyone deserves someone to fight for them. I fought for you. Someday you'll fight for someone else. That's how love works." Stephen wiped his tears. "What are you going to do with the notebook?" "Nothing. It stays hidden. Forever if possible. And if it's not possible, then it comes to light and whoever has to fall will fall. But I hope that day never comes." Stephen nodded. "I hope so too." They both stayed silent, drinking coffee, watching the bougainvillea on the patio move with the wind, enjoying the peace they had won with so much effort. In July, something unexpected happened. Leo. The Silence appeared at Margaret's house. He came alone. No visible weapons. He knocked on the door respectfully. Margaret opened it. "What happened? Is everything okay?" Leo took off his hat. "I came to thank you. 2 weeks ago they arrested one of my bosses, a man who called himself the Tiger. They arrested him on other charges. But when they interrogated him, he started talking about old things. Betrayals from 30 years ago, names you mentioned that night." Margaret felt a knot in her stomach. And And it turns out that man had ordered my uncle killed in 2003. I never knew who it was. Now I know. Thanks to what you said that night, I started investigating. I connected the dots, I found evidence, the tiger confessed everything. Finally, I have justice for my family. Margaret didn't know what to say. She just nodded. Leo continued. That's why I came. To tell you the deal stands. But also to tell you thank you. You gave me something I needed. Answers. He put on his hat. Take good care of yourself, Mrs. Margaret. And don't worry. Your secret is safe with me. He left in his truck. Margaret closed the door. She sat in her rocking chair. Life was strange. She had kept secrets to protect, and those same secrets now brought justice in ways she never imagined. Maybe everything happens for a reason. Maybe secrets have their moment, their purpose, their reason to exist. What would you have done in her place? Keep secrets for 40 years or speak from the beginning? Tell us in the comments, because the decisions we make define who we are. 2 years passed. Margaret turned 83 in March 2027. Her health stayed strong. She kept walking to the market. She kept making tamales for the town festivals. She kept being the grandmother everyone knew. Nobody suspected her past. Nobody imagined the secrets she carried. Stephen got married. He had a daughter. He named her Margaret in honor of his grandmother. Margaret cried with happiness every time she held her great-granddaughter. The notebook remained hidden with her comadre Hortensia. Nobody else knew of its existence. The pact with the Jalisco cartel held. There were no more visits, no more threats. Life flowed normally. But in September 2027, everything changed. The federal government launched a massive operation against the Jalisco cartel in South Texas. 50 people fell in 1 week, including Leo the Silence. They arrested him in a raid in Laredo. They took him to federal prison. Margaret found out from the news. She felt a mixture of relief and concern. Relief because Leo was the only one in the cartel who knew the whole story. Concern because without him there was nobody to maintain the agreement from the inside. 3 days after his arrest, Leo sent a message. It arrived through her comadre Hortensia. A man had knocked on her door. He gave her an envelope. Inside was a letter written by hand. Mrs. Margaret, they arrested me. I'm going to be in prison many years, maybe the rest of my life. But I want you to know I kept my word. I didn't tell anyone about you. I destroyed all the records of that night. The 8 men who were there received orders to forget everything. Your secret died with me. You can live peacefully. The deal stands even from prison. Thank you for the answers you gave me. Rest in peace when your time comes. Leo Andrade. Margaret read the letter 3 times. She burned it in the stove. She poured the ashes down the drain. That chapter was closed. Finally. Completely. In December 2027, the journalist Marcus Solis published a book about drug trafficking in South Texas. Margaret bought it. She read it completely. The book talked about many things, about roots, about cartels, about violence, but it didn't mention her name. It didn't tell her story. The journalist had kept his word. On the last page of the book there was a dedication. For the invisible women who fought in silence. Their names aren't here, but their actions saved lives. Someday history will remember them. Margaret closed the book. She smiled. She didn't need history to remember her. It was enough to know she had done the right thing, that she had protected her family, that she had used her knowledge for good. That was enough. One Sunday in January 2028, the whole family gathered at Margaret's house. It was her great-granddaughter's baptism. Stephen arrived with his wife and the baby. Her other grandchildren came from San Antonio and Del Rio. Her children arrived from Eagle Pass. The house filled with laughter, with food, with music, with life. Margaret sat in her rocking chair holding little Margaret. The baby slept in her arms. Stephen approached. He knelt next to his grandmother. Thank you for everything, Grandma, for saving me, for teaching me, for being who you are. Margaret stroked her grandson's head. I only did what any grandmother would do, protect her own. No, Grandma, you did much more. You were brave when nobody else was. You were smart when everyone was careless. You were strong when the world wanted to break you. You're a hero, even though nobody knows it. Margaret looked at the baby in her arms. Hero is a big word, mijo. I was just a woman who had to make difficult decisions. Some turned out well, others not so much. But I always tried to do the right thing. That's all that matters. Stephen kissed his grandmother's forehead. I love you. I love you too, now go. Take care of your guests. I'll stay here with this beauty. The party continued until nighttime. When everyone left, Margaret cleaned the house slowly. She put away the dishes. She swept the patio. She turned off the lights. She got into her bed. Before sleeping, she thought about everything she had lived. 83 years of life. 7 years as an informant. 40 years keeping secrets. 1 night confronting hitmen. 2 years of peace after. It had all been worth it. She fell asleep with a smile. She dreamed of her husband Marcus, who died 15 years ago. She dreamed of her parents. She dreamed of all the people she loved who were no longer here. And in the dream, they all told her the same thing. You did well. Rest. You earned it. The next day, Margaret woke at 5 in the morning as always. She made her coffee. She sat in her rocking chair. She watched the sun come up. Life continued. Simple. Quiet. Normal. In San Antonio, Stephen opened his auto shop. In Eagle Pass, her comadre Hortensia kept the notebook in a safe place. In federal prison, Leo. The silence served his sentence in silence. In San Geronimo, the town woke up not knowing that among them lived a legend. An 83-year-old woman who had changed the course of many lives without anyone knowing. Margaret finished her coffee. She stood up. She prepared for another normal day, because that was what she wanted most. Normalcy, peace, silence. After so many years of carrying secrets, ordinary life was a gift, and she appreciated it every second. In the afternoon, her neighbor Mrs. Lupita Garcia came to visit. They brought their knitting. They sat on the patio to chat about simple things, about the weather, about the parish festival that was coming, about the town gossip. Listen, comadre Margaret, Mrs. Lupita asked. Is it true that 2 years ago some armed men came looking for your grandson? Margaret didn't look up from her knitting. They came. We talked. They left. Nothing happened. But what did you tell them so they would just leave like that? I told them the truth, that my grandson wasn't there, that I didn't know where he was, and they believed me. Mrs. Lupita shook her head in amazement. Oh, comadre, you really are lucky. May God watch over you. Margaret smiled. It's not luck, comadre. It's knowing how to talk. They continued knitting in silence. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. The bougainvillea moved with the breeze. Dogs barked in the distance. Everything was perfect. Everything was in its place. That night before sleeping, Margaret opened her Bible. It was a lifelong habit. Read a psalm before sleeping. But tonight she didn't read. She just held the Bible in her hands. And she prayed. Thank you, God, for allowing me to protect my family. Thank you for giving me the intelligence to know what to say and what to keep quiet. Thank you for these 83 years of life. For the joys and for the sorrows. Everything had a purpose. Everything taught me something. Now I only ask that when my time comes, you come for me in peace. That I can go knowing I left everything in order. That my family is safe. That the secrets are kept. That I fulfilled my mission in this world. She closed the Bible. She turned off the light. She lay down. She closed her eyes. And she slept deeply. Without nightmares. Without fears. Without guilt. Only peace. The following years passed quietly. Margaret reached 85 years old, then 87. Her health began to decline slowly. She no longer walked to the market. Her grandchildren brought her what she needed, but her mind stayed clear, her memory intact, the secrets firmly kept. In 2032, Margaret became gravely ill. Pneumonia. They admitted her to the hospital in Eagle Pass. The whole family gathered. Stephen didn't leave her side. One night when they were alone, Margaret called him. "Mijo, come closer." Stephen approached the bed. He took his grandmother's fragile hand. "Tell me, Grandma." "The notebook. It's with your comadre Hortensia." "I know. When I die, you decide what to do with it. If you want to destroy it, destroy it. If you want to keep it, keep it. If you want to turn it over to the authorities when there's no more danger, do it. It's your decision now." "Grandma, don't talk like that. You're going to recover." Margaret smiled weakly. "Mijo, I'm 88 years old. I lived longer than I expected. I did everything I had to do. Now I'm ready. Don't be afraid. Death is just the next step." Stephen was crying. "I don't want you to go." "I know. But that's life. We all leave someday. What's important is how we lived. And I lived well. I protected my family. I helped many people. I kept secrets that needed to be kept. I don't regret anything. I love you, Grandma. I love you too, Mijo. Now let me rest. I'm tired." Margaret closed her eyes. She breathed deeply, and she fell asleep. She didn't wake up. She died peacefully at 3 in the morning on March 12, 2032. She was 88 years old. The funeral was massive. All of San Geronimo attended. The church was full. People talked about Margaret as the town's good woman, everyone's grandmother, the one who always helped. Nobody mentioned her secret past. Nobody knew. Stephen gave the speech at the wake. "My grandmother was the bravest person I knew. She faced things you can't imagine. She protected her family in ways you'll never know. She taught us by example that true courage isn't not having fear. It's acting correctly despite the fear. Today we bury her body, but her spirit lives in all of us. In every difficult decision we make, in every moment we choose to protect those we love, in every secret we keep for the good of others." After the funeral, Stephen went to his comadre Hortensia. She handed him the notebook. Stephen held it in his hands. The weight of 40 years of history. "What are you going to do with that?" Hortensia asked. "I don't know yet, but whatever it is, it'll be what my grandmother would have wanted." Stephen put the notebook in a safe in his house. It's still there today, waiting. Maybe someday it will come to light. Maybe not. Only time will tell. If this story inspired you, subscribe to discover more stories of silent courage. Leave your like if you believe the true heroes are those who protect without seeking glory. And tell us in the comments where you're watching us from, because stories like Margaret's remind us that the greatest courage sometimes lives in the most unexpected people.